Joining us to discuss the reemergence of the ISIS leader, former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth. And Lisa joins us right now from the newsroom. Welcome back to America's Forum. Washington Post, their headline, wounded, dead, or missed entirely by U.S. airstrikes. Do we know at this particular time the answer to that, Lisa?
We don't know for sure. We do know across the intelligence community they're analyzing the tape. They're analyzing it for two things. One is to verify whether it is Baghdadi on the tape. And then the second thing they're trying to do here is to verify the timing that the tape was made. And the preliminary analysis, again, very preliminary, is that it not only is Baghdadi, but that it is a very recent tape made after the airstrike supposedly happened, which certainly suggests that he is alive. Now, he may be wounded, but that he is alive.
So, Lisa, we had gotten reports a couple days ago saying he's, presumed dead, well wounded. Why all this misinformation? Where did that come from?
The problem, the terrorist threat in general, the terrorists are the absolute hardest target for the intelligence agencies to get. ISIS is even more so because we lost a lot of sources after the Iraq War and then after actually bin Laden was killed and President Obama came out and provided details on the operation. We lost our sources, they went to ground. So we didn't have that. Now, where this came from was a tweet initially from the Iraqi Air Force. And the Iraqi Air Force is absolutely notorious for overstating what they're doing and their wins. So when this happened, this came out, then a bunch of people jumped on the bandwagon saying, oh yeah, he's dead, he's wounded, we hit him, great job. That's where it all came from. We also do know there were ISIS leaders that were targeted in the airstrike, so it's not completely fabricated here. It's just that it appears that the leader was not al-Baghdadi. It was probably a different leader.
Okay.
Lisa, you and I have talked about this. Without having the boots on the ground and those intelligence officers inside the countries there, is it difficult really to target these terrorists? And is this just another argument maybe that there needs to be more military people on the ground to try to find out the exact locations of these terrorists?
It is difficult. We know that the Kurds, for example, have been helping to call in the strikes based on where they are seeing people or where they're seeing suggestions that leadership is meeting. Military does provide us with some insight, but really this goes back to developing sources. And when you look at the terrorist target, there are very few unilateral sources with terrorism. It's very hard, for example, me as a case officer, Valerie Plame, if those of you who watched that saw this, you can't go in and go up usually to a terrorist and say, hi, I'd really like you to work with me and provide me with information. Instead, we have to do what we call a daisy chain. And that would mean you recruit someone who's close to a terrorist who then recruits somebody else who's close. It's a multi-step process. It's extremely difficult. Terrorists also take a very long time to develop. And what we really need is human source reporting. We need to get back in there and redevelop those sources.
So, Lisa, we've heard reports that the town of Baji has been reclaimed. This is, of course, home of the largest oil refinery. How big of a victory is this, and how important is it?
It is important for a number of reasons. A lot of what ISIS plays on is the psychological, as you know, and it's a momentum game, sort of. So every win ISIS makes, you see them getting more and more supporters coming in. They're then able to get more money. They're able, it's exponentially grows. The fact that when they are pushed back, it has the opposite effect. Now, there is also a danger here. Well, let me finish that first. It's also good for the Iraqis because we kind of have needed a victory against ISIS. ISIS continues to make strengths and make gains, and this does help the Iraqi military psychologically. On the other hand, what we have seen is every time ISIS has had a setback, literally every time, is when they do one of these public beheadings. When they lost the Turkish border, area on the Turkish border, they beheaded a Turkish citizen. Both Americans that they beheaded has been after a setback. So intelligence sources are concerned a little bit about what the ramifications are going to be about this setback.
You know, when we first started learning about ISIS, we heard that they were enemies with al-Qaeda. Now it seems like ISIS and al-Qaeda, they may have joined forces. Set aside these differences. First of all, is that what you're hearing, and what kind of impact could that alliance have on the United States?
We are hearing the same thing. My sources are telling me that at least parts of al-Qaeda, now it's not clear yet whether the entire al-Qaeda network has joined in, but unfortunately I think this is a result of the fact that ISIS really is gaining in terms of the area, and the other militant groups are looking to join on to this and to create, you know, a larger axis of terrorism. For the United States and the rest of the world, again, this is a really bad thing. You're talking about sharing resources. I'm sure you all saw ISIS came out and they're going to start minting their own currency now. They're running things like it's a country. They're not running things like a terrorist group. They're providing a safe haven where people can plan attacks. They're creating places where you can train, you get more arms. And obviously, the larger that group is, the more monolithic it is, the more of a threat it is going to be.
Now, Lisa, you just mentioned that they're literally printing their own money, and we were reporting on that earlier. I'm curious to know, is this for funding, or is it an attempt to consider themselves a legitimate nation, if you will, by having their own currency?
I think it's the latter. Funding-wise, remember, these guys are making about $1 million a day, if not more, through selling oil, through ransom. They're selling off the aid. We know for a fact the U.S. aid convoys that are coming in, they're taxing those or selling those off. Financing is not their problem. But what they are doing is setting up a currency. And I'm sure you also read the UN report where they're cutting off the fingers of people they catch smoking cigarettes. They beheaded a female dentist who continued to treat male patients publicly, and now they're printing their own currency. They're implementing laws, they're implementing their currency. They're basically saying, we're a state, we're running this place like a state. We're not some little terrorist group out here in the desert. And they're trying to become a legitimate state.
Wanted to touch base on the attack a couple of days ago in Turkey involving those 3 sailors. Do you have an update on that? And is Turkey going to continue to be kind of a volatile situation for U.S. servicemen and women?
Rick, you and I spoke about this before. What we are continuing to hear, I have several groups of friends who are in Turkey right now, and they're telling me they're on high alert. They're telling me they have been asked not to go out in public, that it's just too volatile, it's too difficult right now. So the concern absolutely is that things are not going to get better, at least not right now, and that for Americans in the region, they're being urged to keep a low profile for their own safety.
So many hot spots around the world, ISIS, al-Qaeda, what's going on in Turkey. Lisa, Ruth, you always put it in perspective for us. Thanks so much for your comments today on America's Forum. And you're watching America's Forum right here on Newsmax TV.